So we are recording. So thank you, Helen, for joining me today. Today I have Helen McConnell from helenmcconnell.com. And this is Meenakshi Ramesh from tapyourwaytohealing.com. I'm doing this recording for the Autism Awareness Month series of videos. Today is day 9. And before I have a conversation with Helen, I would like to read the bio. Helen McConnell is a coach, speaker, author, and a personal transformation specialist, helping people recover from anxiety, stress, panic, and trauma, and improving their relationships, their health, and their spiritual connection. Helen is certified in clinical EFT tapping and has a full box of tools to help her clients get the results they desire. She is the author of 10 Simple Things You Can Do Now to Profoundly Change the World, a handbook for transforming your internal world and affecting your outer world. It's available on Amazon. Helen works with clients and groups worldwide, in person, by Zoom, and Skype, and by phone. Welcome, Helen. Thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Meenakshi. You know, I just love you.
Thank you, Helen. So to start off, I just wanted to ask you as to how you found tapping and what was your aha moment?
Oh, that's one of my favorite stories. It's kind of a love story as far as I'm concerned. I don't really feel like I found tapping, but rather tapping found me. Mm-hmm. It came through an email. I couldn't tell you who sent me the email, but somehow I got a tapping video. I think it was Jessica Ortner doing a tapping video, and it was a long time ago, about the time they started the Tapping World Summit. And I thought, I had heard of tapping before a long time ago, but I thought, well, I'm going to tap along with this video. And I just remember where I was sitting. I don't remember what we were tapping about, but I had this sensation of just this utter relief and release. And I thought, wow, that was really powerful. That was really powerful. And I just kept thinking about it. And then I started doing it often, doing this because it was so simple. And I started doing some research and following the Ortners, and I don't remember how it snowballed, but I knew pretty soon that I needed to be doing this for a living. I mean, as my calling. So pretty soon after that, I quit my job and started tapping full time.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story, Helen.
I say tapping and I fell in love at first sight.
I know. I say the same thing too when I share tapping in groups or with anyone, that I literally fell in love with the process. Mm-hmm. Because it's just the same, you know, the somatic release, the physiological response, relaxation response that I experienced made me just go back to it over and over and over again. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that beautiful story. So I know you answered my question. What was your aha moment? I think your aha moment really shifted you from, you know, maybe a 9 to 5 to doing tapping for a living.
Well, I think, you know, that morning when I did that tapping and I felt that release, I knew that this was something I wanted to follow. But I remember the day I was at work at my job and we were having some kind of event and there was a panel discussion. And I wanted to ask the presenter something, but I was too scared. You know, that feeling of, oh my God, my voice is going to shake. And just that feeling of, all I had to do was raise my hand and be called on. And so I sat there tapping. I did a little bit of tapping. I'm sure I subtly went around the points. I didn't say anything, just sensed in. I was already totally triggered. I knew my voice would sound terrible. I tapped about 2 rounds. And then this was the turning point, almost without my volition, my hand shot up. The presenter called on me. I heard my voice coming out without any nervousness or shaking. And that was pretty miraculous. But then I asked the question, and the most miraculous thing was I was able to hear the answer. I wasn't just sitting there going, ooh, what did I just say? Did I look stupid? That kind of thing. And that's when I knew, like, oh my God, everyone needs to learn this.
Right, right.
And I haven't really been too afraid to speak in public since then.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So as I told you before, I'm doing this series of videos for the Autism Awareness Month because
wonderful.
autism is very close to my heart because my son, I have two boys and my second son is on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like I would think of my life before tapping and after tapping. And when I think about myself and where I was before tapping and how I am, where I am today, it's like, it's such a profound shift.
Yeah.
And I think about it time and time again, you know, I wish I had tapping when my children were very young.
Me
So
too.
yeah, so my message to the audience, especially since I'm doing this for the Autism Awareness Month, to families and caregivers who work, who are making an influence and an impact on the lives of children and young adults and adults on the autism spectrum, to use tapping as a self-care tool and to basically take care of themselves first, which can really shift the energy for the, you know, children and the adults that they are
Absolutely.
working with. So what are your thoughts on that, Helen?
Oh, that's just so what I believe also. A lot of times people will come to my tapping meetup, or, you know, I'll give a presentation somewhere and they'll say, well, you know, I'd like to tap about, you know, my son, for example, because I get so frustrated or I get so scared or I get so stressed or whatever. Can we tap? Like they want to fix the other person. And I'll say, okay, the first thing we always need to do is take care of ourselves. Once we start tapping on how we feel about whatever's happening with the other person, and we lower the intensity of that, then we're often open to a new perspective or a little bit of new patience, or the other person changes because we are no longer stressed. It's just miraculous. So yes, I was thinking for parents with children on the spectrum, there are some autistic kids who don't like to be touched, for example. And so tapping, how can that help? Well, it can actually help the parent, and you can tap surrogately for your child. And so there are lots of ways to use it, but ultimately it's about, if I'm feeling better, the other person's going to respond differently.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I have worked in our school district as an aide with children on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, working with my own son and with meeting so many children on the spectrum, they are very sensitive to energies. They can really, you know, the moment you walk inside a room, they can just feel our energy. They're very sensitive to picking up our energies. And sometimes, you know, they are, because they are so sensitive, the energy that we bring to the room, it really, really impacts them. So that's where I feel tapping, a tool like tapping, can be very helpful to regulate our emotions so that, you know, we can be more present with a child.
Yes, it's so important.
Yeah. So talking about surrogate tapping, Helen, could you share some tips for the, you know, viewers, listeners, about how to do surrogate tapping? What is your protocol? Have you used it?
I have used it, and I've talked to well, in my tapping training, all the trainings they do teach a surrogate, or, you know, we experiment with it. But I also spoke to Gary Craig, who developed EFT tapping. I went to one of his workshops and I asked him about it. I said, a lot of people feel that if we're going to surrogate tap for someone, that we need their permission. And I said, what do you think about that? And he said, well, if we're going to truly surrogate tap and find love for this person, he said, well, I don't know why we need their permission. We never asked their permission when we were angry at them and said horrible things about them to their face or behind their back. So why should we need their permission to love them? And he said, if their heart isn't open to receiving what we're sending, they won't get it, but it will not hurt them. And so I don't feel that some people think it's unethical. I don't feel that it's unethical to surrogate tap for someone else. But here's what I always say. If you're considering surrogate tapping for someone else, do your own work first.
Hmm.
So in other words, I'm not going to use the kids on the spectrum or people on the spectrum as an example, because this will be easier and less triggering. But say you have a spouse who whatever leaves the toilet seat up or whatever, and that really bugs you. So that you don't go the first thing and tap, even though I wish my husband or my spouse would lower the toilet seat, I love and accept myself. You don't go there. You take care of your feelings first. We're not trying to fix the other person. We're trying to address our own reactions. And then when we're neutral, completely calm, then we can tap for the other person. And what I generally recommend is I start by saying, I am tapping for, and I say their name. And you never do this in front of anybody. This is very private, I think. I just acknowledge that I'm tapping on behalf of someone. And then I really try to be so compassionate and empathetic that I can think what they're thinking. I mean, no guarantee, but say I have a boss at work who's just hard to work with. When I get to that place where I can tap, surrogate tap for that boss person, I can say, I'm tapping for my boss. Even though I work so hard and no one appreciates me, I love and accept myself. Even though these people who work for me drive me crazy, I love and accept myself. We really go into that empathetic state of the other person, even though they don't know how hard I work for them, and I wish they would just do what I want them to do. In other words, I'm speaking for the other person. And you say, I love and accept myself. And as we do that, the other person may get the benefit, but we will get the benefit too, because we will become just ultimately empathetic. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes,
Suggesting?
yes, it does. And surrogate tapping can be very useful for children and adults on the spectrum, because many of them have, some of them have nonverbal autism, and some of them have a really difficult time communicating. So in those scenarios, I feel the parent or a caregiver really can clear their emotions first, and then kind of like, tune into the energy of the individual, and kind of like, as you said, come from a place of compassion and empathy, thinking that what is it that they are feeling, what is it that they could be experiencing, and give those emotions a voice as they are tapping along. I feel that can really make a huge shift.
And there's this one other thing that I was thinking of. A friend of mine was telling me, this is just so good, that when you're with someone and they understand tapping, or they know you like to tap, if you're feeling frustrated or you don't know what to tap about, or you're scared or whatever, you can say to the person, would you help me? Because I'm going to tap for me. And you say, even though I don't know what to say here, I love and accept myself. And even though I feel whatever, frightened or frustrated, I love and accept myself. Even though I would really like to help this person, but I don't know how, something like that. We don't want to be, we just want to be as honest as we can be. We're not trying to be passive aggressive or anything. I don't know. They're just use your best judgment. When it comes to surrogate tapping, I would say do it alone first. Always do it when you're by yourself, or, unless you have specific instructions or permission from the person to tap on their behalf with them there, because they can't. Otherwise, I would say do it alone. It's like prayer.
Yes, that's what, it's like setting an intention and, sending a loving thought and saying a prayer for that person. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen, for saying that, sharing that. And we talked about surrogate tapping. I'd like you to share your thoughts on creating a ripple effect using tapping, how tapping creates a ripple effect. I'm a really big believer of that, and I'd like you to share your thoughts and experiences.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the ways tapping works so beautifully, but although the ripple effect isn't something we always get to experience ourselves, but we just have to trust that it's happening. But let's see, I'm trying to think of a very specific event. Oh, okay. So one of my clients who was contacted me to work on some traumatic events from her younger life. We worked through her trauma, so she was resolved. And I want people to understand that tapping can, when with the right practitioner, you can actually resolve trauma. And what that means is you no longer get triggered, or you no longer get flooded when you think of that event, or when, and that event doesn't come into your mind very often. We're not stuffing it, we're not tamping it down. So I just wanted to make that point. We're not managing trauma, we're resolving trauma. Okay. So I was helping this woman, and we got to a place where she felt like she was done, resolved on that set of issues. And so her husband is in the military, and he contacted my colleague, Marilyn, who works with vets with PTSD for free, and he worked with her. And he got such resolution after like 3 sessions that he decided to take tapping into his community work. He's no longer in the military, he's retired, young guy. And so now he's out in the community sharing this. So to me, that's a pretty huge ripple effect. I don't know how many lives he's affecting, and how different their lives are because they've resolved their traumas. We can't even begin to guess how huge the ripple will go. But I always imagine I help this person and this person and this person, and each of them help 3 or 4 or 10 other people, or just affect those lives positively. Or better, you could even say now they no longer negatively affect people's lives, however you want to look at it. But healing always has a ripple effect, always.
Yes. And last night I was going through your book, the 10 simple things that you can do to change the world. So in that one, I think in chapter 9, you're talking about healing yourself first, healing all levels, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Yeah.
So could you talk a few things about that chapter from your book?
Yes, and that's really funny because I haven't reviewed my book in a while. But the interesting thing is that writing that book, again, because of tapping, I wrote that book in it didn't take long once I sat down and finally did it. It was as if something worked through me, which is always the case when I'm tapping with people. I just feel like I'm just a vessel. But with regard to healing ourselves, I do encourage people to use tapping to heal all areas of your life. And this is a lifelong journey. This isn't something, oh, slam bam, okay, check it off the list, I'm done. This is the mystery of being human. We're not trying to become perfect. We're just trying to get comfortable in our skin and return to our wholeness of who we really are, who our soul wants to be. And so tapping works on all areas. And one of the things I encourage people to do, and this is for me more than anybody, is to remember to keep doing it. Just because I worked on something a couple of weeks ago and got resolution there doesn't mean I stop. This means I go forward and step into the next thing, into the next thing. And here's the thing about it is that we don't know what the next thing is. We don't know what the next level is. We have no idea. And our unconscious mind, our pre-programmed mind doesn't want us to go poking around on things that we don't know about. And yet that's what we need to do to evolve and move forward. So tapping is the perfect gift to help us enter into an area that we're not comfortable looking at.
Yeah. But it lets us enter into that area with a lot of comfort without the pain and the,
Yeah, or at least being able to handle the pain or the discomfort. There will be discomfort, but it's never as bad as we think it is. And okay, and then it also helps to have someone to work with at times. You can do a lot on your own, but every once in a while you'll get stuck and you go, I just can't get any further. Then it's important to go find you or me or another practitioner or somebody to help us go a little deeper.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Helen, I just want to ask you about what would you tell someone who is really using logic and their left brain to understand tapping?
Mm-hmm.
Because I
You
know
mean
there is a lot
how to understand it or how to use it?
how how to understand it. Of course, there is a lot of science behind tapping, and we
Mm-hmm.
can always direct them to studies and all the research papers and things like that. But if someone, when I present tapping in small groups, I'm always asked like a lot of logical questions, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't know how to answer them. So, what would you tell an individual who tries to use logic and
Well,
tapping?
there are a couple ways to approach it. First of all, I do tell them that tapping and its effects are like the internet. You can't see how it works. Most of us don't even really understand how it works, but we see the effects of how it works. Tapping is like very much like electricity. Nobody knows what really what electricity, the average person knows nothing about electricity except that when you plug something in, it works. Or if you're standing out in lightning, you might get zapped. But we don't understand it, but we accept that it works. We see the results of it. When you type up an email and hit send, where does it go? It doesn't go through wires. It doesn't go through. It's energetic, and so just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't do something. And I think that's for the people who are super logical, and if people are super logical but still want to really get it, I encourage them to say things like, even though I think, instead of even though I feel, even though I think these thoughts, I love and accept myself. Even though I think this tapping is weird, I love and accept myself. Even though I don't understand how this works, I love and accept myself. Just to say what's true. And I find that many people, not all, but many people who are much more logically oriented, sometimes it just takes a little longer. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, but if they're willing to stick with it and see the results, because I don't believe there's anybody who's all logic and no emotion. It's just that most of us have turned off our emotions, or turned off access to our emotions. They run our lives, but we don't pay any attention to them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's what I tell people too. Like, tapping gives you the safety net wherein, you're able to be present with your emotions, giving yourself permission to be present with your emotions in a gentle manner. So definitely,
it's the ultimate self-soothing tool. So even if they aren't aware of what's going on, the sensations in their bodies or their emotions, it's still having an effect. Even if even if they're not as aware of it, it still works.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah.
So I know, like, you use other tools. You have so many other tools in your toolbox. Could you talk a little bit about reframes, the concept that came from NLP, which we use in tapping as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I kind of, when I was training and getting certified, that was one of my things. Was I really had a hard time knowing when to reframe and when to not reframe. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know when I reframe and when reframing basically is helping someone to see things a little bit differently, in my point of view. I do my best to listen to what the person's telling me, and oftentimes just stating it back to them is a reframe for them. I don't know if that makes sense, but we go around spewing stuff and we don't really hear what we say all the time. But then I come along and I hear everything, and I'm writing down what they've said, and we start tapping, and they'll say like, "How did you know that?" Well, you told me, how did you? Or they'll say, I'm trying to think, I'm not It's not my favorite thing to describe the different parts of tapping because I struggled with that when I was getting certified, knowing how and when to reframe. But basically, my understanding of it is just giving somebody, giving their mind a little different way of looking at something. So one of my favorite reframes is to say, I wonder if it's possible. You know, I wonder if it's possible, or what if? And just saying something, sometimes even just the opposite. So if somebody might come to me and say, you know, I just find it so hard to concentrate, or whatever they find so hard. And we start tapping, and my reframe often is, I wonder if it could be easier. I wonder if I'm making this hard. I wonder if, because I tell myself it's hard, it's hard. You know, that I don't know if that's really what you're asking me, but reframes are, we need to be careful with reframes, not to put words into people's mouths.
Yeah. So, and even with the reframes, what I've noticed is when we are reframing, when we are tapping and reframing, that has a positive impact, rather than just like, you know, you sitting there and just giving the reframes, you know, I think this is another way of looking at it. Instead of saying that, as you said, kind of like a bridging statement. I wonder if you know, what
I wonder if it's possible
yeah,
that I could look at this differently, or I wonder if the world doesn't have to seem so mean, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. With the tapping, I tap with everything.
Yes.
I mean, I use Ho'oponopono too, but I tap with it. Because if your listeners know what Ho'oponopono is, it's a Hawaiian self-forgiveness technique, and it was devised for self-forgiveness and reconciliation. And it's so simple, at least the simple version that I learned, and it works with tapping. To me, what tapping physically does, it does several things. First of all, it soothes my nervous system. That's the main thing. Soothes my nervous system. This starts the calming process so that I can breathe, so I can think, so the blood can come back to my brain. All the fight or flight can go off. So number one, it soothes my nervous system. Number two, to be honest with you, tapping is very hypnotic. You know, it's very, I've given presentations in front of the inmates at the high security men's penitentiary a couple times, and there were like 75 guys at this presentation. I got them to tap because it's very hypnotic. Once they start, they'll, I mean, they're not doing everything I tell them to do, but they're doing what I'm suggesting. They're saying what I'm saying. And so I find that really powerful. It's very hypnotic. So when we get into that hypnotic state, a little bit lower frequency, we can be more suggestible we can put in good suggestions, and we can release negative suggestions at that same time. And so I don't remember what we were talking. Using all the different tools. I just think that there are so many tools available, and every time I learn something new in the field of brain science or psychology or anything, I always just bring it into my tapping.
Excellent. So before we wrap up, Helen, I just want to ask this one last question. What would you, given that there are so many modalities out there, so many healing modalities out there, what do you think, in your opinion, excuse me, what do you think makes a tapping very unique and special?
I've thought a lot about this, and I talk a lot about this because before tapping, I still do acupuncture. I still have acupuncture sometimes. Acupuncture, massage, Reiki, what's the head one? I can't think of it. Body talk, all of these modalities, even EMDR and stuff, they're all wonderful. There's nothing wrong with any of them. But what I love best about tapping is that I can do it myself anywhere. Now, I can't do everything myself, but I can do a lot. I can also teach 4-year-olds how to tap. and they don't even, some of my clients, their kids tell them, Daddy, you need to tap. And they get it, because they know that it soothes their parent, and therefore the household is calmer. So that's one of the things I think, because it's so accessible. You can use words, you can use not words. I can tap when I'm on the bus, I can tap when I'm in the grocery store, I can tap anywhere. And that's really powerful.
Awesome, awesome. So Helen, so before we wrap up again, I have one more request. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, that's all right.
Would you be willing to walk me through this is mainly, in honor of all the parents, families,
Yes.
and members who work with children on the spectrum.
Yes.
If you can just walk us through a few rounds of tapping, that will be great.
Absolutely. Let's see what we can do. And this is the beautiful thing. Tapping has given me that gift that I could just go, sure, I'll come up with something. I don't have to freak out. It'll all be fine. So first, for your listeners, I want to honor all parents, teachers, caregivers who work with kids on the spectrum and kids not on the spectrum. Our children, sounds so corny, but they are our future. And it's time. This is the most critical time in human history to end the old ways of doing things and bring these new ways in, these loving, compassionate ways of doing things. So first, I just want to honor them for that. All right. So, and yes, let's do some tapping. Let's see. Everyone just take a nice deep breath. And as we begin to tap, Meenakshi, can you give me a word or a phrase or a emotion that you think would be helpful?
I would say, since you spoke about self-forgiveness, I would really like that. I mean, that comes to my mind now because I have gone through that myself. When I was going through the journey with my son, I still do. There was a lot of guilt and a lot of, that, oh, I should have known better. I could have done this. What did I do wrong? Those kind of feelings I had. So I think tapping really helped me soothe my nervous system and get to this place of being very compassionate and loving and forgiving towards myself.
That's a beautiful topic. And I love forgiveness. I think self-forgiveness and forgiveness is huge.
Yeah.
All right. So if you can just sense into any sense of guilt or remorse that you have about, I should have known better, I should have done it differently, I wish I'd known then what I know now. And just sense into how that feels in your body, if you can. Notice it in your down along your gut here. You can't see me, but right down here. Notice it in your gut or your chest or your throat.
I notice in my chest.
Okay. What does it feel like to you?
Kind of like a slight heaviness and a heaviness and a tightness.
Okay. And on a scale of 0 to 10, how tight does it feel, Meenakshi?
Right now, it's about a 4. It's not that high.
Okay, that's fine. And anyone who's listening, just use the words that we use, and your subconscious mind will translate it into whatever you need. You'll be amazed what happens, okay? So let's start by tapping on the karate chop, the side of the hand, and say, even though I feel this sensation in my chest.
Even though I feel this sensation in my chest.
When I think about the past.
When I think about the past.
And how I wish I'd done things differently.
And how I wish I had done things differently.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
And I'm open to forgiving me.
And I'm open to forgiving me.
For the things I did and didn't do.
For the things I did and didn't do.
Okay, we'll do one more on the karate chop. Even though I feel this heaviness in my chest.
I feel this heaviness in my chest.
I should have known better.
I should have known better.
And I've been beating myself up a bit.
And I've been beating myself up a bit.
But I love and accept myself.
But I love and accept myself.
And I'm open to the possibility.
And I'm open to the possibility.
of being kinder and gentler with me.
of being kinder and gentler with me.
Okay, and now we'll just tap around, tap to the top of the head and say this heaviness in my chest
This heaviness in my chest.
and on the eyebrow. When I think about how I should have done better,
When I think about how I should have done better.
side of the eye. There are so many things I should have done better.
There are so many things I should have done better.
Under the eye, I should have known.
I should have known.
Under the nose, but I didn't know.
But I didn't know.
On the chin, I still don't know everything.
I still don't know everything.
On the collarbone, but I've always done the best I can.
But I've always done the best I can.
Under the arm, in any given moment.
In any given moment.
Top of the head, I do the best I can.
I do the best I can.
On the eyebrow, I've always done the best I can.
I've always done the best I can.
Side of the eye, with the information and resources that I have in any moment.
With the information and resources that I have in any moment.
Under the eye, I always do the best I can.
I always do the best I can.
Under the nose, and sometimes that doesn't seem good enough.
And sometimes that doesn't seem good enough.
On the chin, but it is the best that I can do.
But it is the best that I can do.
Collarbone, I'm open to forgiving myself.
I'm open to forgiving myself.
Under the arm, for stuff that happened in the past.
For stuff that happened in the past.
Okay, and then just take a nice deep breath. And just kind of check into that heaviness in your chest when you think about, oh, I should have done better. I should have done that better. I should have known. And think about how that feels now.
I have to say this, Helen, even as we were done tapping with at the karate chop, my number shifted to a 1.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel my heart opening up and, just as you said, be really opening myself to a better possibility. So that's what I'm presenting myself to right now.
I love that. I love that. Because oftentimes it does. It just takes a little bit and saying it out loud, and suddenly it's not spinning around in our head anymore, but we hear it and we go, I wouldn't treat myself that way. I wouldn't treat my child that way. Why would I, why am I treating my younger self that way? Why would I do that? We don't need to do that. It's old learned programming from many, 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 many generations, but kindness and compassion is the key. But it may take a while. Let your listeners know. That may, getting to that place where you're at and where I'm at, it takes a while.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes. So
it's really a journey.
Yeah, very much so.
This has been so much fun, Helen. Thank you so much for taking the time and
Thank
sharing
you.
your wisdom and knowledge. I'd like you to share to the listeners or viewers how they can contact you if they decide to work with you.
All right. Well, you can go to my website, helenmcconnell.com. And there you can, if you look around and you like what you see and you want to have a conversation, you can go to the schedule a conversation button and we can talk for 20 minutes and see if there's something we can work on together, see if there's a good fit. And after we have that conversation, there's absolutely no pressure. I like people to get as much information as they can. And then we'll see if there's something we can help you with. One thing I just want to say too is that I generally work with veterans with PTSD at no charge. Other people I charge, and I try to make it as accessible to people as possible. And the beautiful thing about tapping is, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, it doesn't take very long to get results. And I like people to know that you're not in this for years and years. I'm going to teach you how to do it. We're going to clear up some stuff, and then you'll be using it on your own.
That's right. Yeah. Awesome, Helen. So in your book, you talk about I shift to a new way of thinking. So I want to tell the listeners and viewers that tapping really helps you to shift to a new way of thinking.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
And that is the answer to all of our problems. Is if we want anything to change in our lives, we need to change our thinking, not try to convince them to change theirs.
That's right.
Yeah.
This has been great, Helen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meenakshi. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.